without that generative AI, it's hard to get this science to who needs it, when they need it, where they need it. And that's how I see its most practical use. Because otherwise, it's hard for anybody in the room, regardless of qualifications, to be qualified in everything.
AI can be a gap between the coach and the member. So telling them how you're using AI, what it's doing, where it's going to be interacting with you, I think is very important. So, and you can apply that same thinking all the way up to corporate. So I think just being transparent is very, very essential at this point of time.
AI has really helped accelerate decision making, both at the consumer level, but also at the enterprise level as well.
In sports, especially in competitive sports, privacy might be used in a different term, but it's the same essence. And therefore, you ultimately have to think about sovereignty, data sovereignty.
Thank you. All right, we're going to kick off this session. I want to thank FIBO and Vinzino for having us here and putting together this panel. My name is Mohammed Iqbal, and I lost my voice. So I'm going to do my best so you can all hear me. Just by way of intro, I'm the founder and chairman of SweatWorks. I'm also the chief strategy officer of ABC Fitness. I also co-host a podcast, a B2B fitness podcast, with my good friend here, Matthew Januszek. We are recording this session live, so for anyone, if you want to review it later, or if you're not here, you'll be able to view this session live. And I think you're recording a lot of sessions coming up here. So we're excited to be here, and we're going to be talking about AI, focused around Gen AI, agentic AI, and a couple other areas related to that. But Matthew, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Januszek. I'm the co-founder of Escape Fitness, and as Mo said, we also host an industry podcast called L.I.F.T.S, so I definitely recommend checking that out because we've been filming a number of sessions from today. I'm very excited about this event that we've been invited to, where I think Vincenzo and the team like to bring together a lot of new startups, and it's an opportunity to give back to the industry. And we've got a very exciting discussion today and a wonderful panel of guests, and I'm going to let them do a little bit of a brief introduction. We have Gregory Gird from Octiv, Grace McNamara from Moverhead and Elfie, and we've got Klaus Mueller from Wictory. So if you guys could just do a brief intro about your company, and then we'll kick off into the questions.
Oh, ladies first, I'll take it. So hi everyone. So my background is fitness, physiology, epidemiology. I typically sit at the intersection of physical activity, health and tech. So I consult to a number of companies, two of them being, one of these said Moverhead, which is a motion capture technology for kids' physical literacy. So probably the only one based on kids' data and kids' movement. It's really amazing, and it can be embedded within games as well as within ultimately any application and any experience. The other one I work with is Elfie, which is a health tech, which is designed around engaging pretty much everyone in the population who has chronic diseases on medications in order to reward people for monitoring their health. So very much around a holistic approach as well as around medication as well as lifestyle. So it's quite complicated. What in reality is about monitoring, is about rewarding and making sure everyone's engaged, especially those who are not engaged in their health. So getting reward for fitness is part of that. And I talk to lots more. So ex-Apple, which I get asked about it quite a bit, but also other companies. So looking forward to sharing more.
Hi everyone. Octiv is a all-in-one gym management software based out of Cape Town, South Africa. We focus on the boutique industry, and yeah, we really are applying AI not only to help our businesses excel and unlock more revenue, but also for us as our own startup, leveraging AI daily to help us grow has been quite important. So very interested to discuss this today.
Good. Who of you guys knows Whoop? Just raise your hand. Whoop. Did you ever hear about Whoop? Am I at the right panel? Wearable devices, Whoop? Garmin, Apple? Okay. Who of you guys knows ChatGPT? Good. So we're the combination of a Whoop for trainers and ChatGPT. That's all you need to know. It's AI used for your data. Hyper-personalization. So we're a software company.
I've just been told to say if anyone would like a translation, there's a code that you can scan and that will translate this. We're just on the My beautiful assistant over there is just pointing out to you.
Was this my accent that made you think about the translation?
Maybe.
Okay, good. I'm Austrian like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and we do have a special accent.
Well, Klaus, I'd love to start with you. You look interesting because you wear all the wearables. I have two on, but then you've also got the red band. So I'm just curious. This is more curiosity before we get into it. Obviously, you've got PPG sensors. They've got to go into your skin, shine the LEDs. What's the purpose behind the red bands covering the sensors?
The red bands is to make them visible. We're not using it in reality because it's going to block the data generation, of course. If this is your question, the red band, yeah. It's just to make sure that people get it.
Just to make sure that people see that you're wearing all the wearables.
True.
Okay, so is there one wearable? So I see the Polar 360 is not on the red band. So is that the one that you're using today, or it just got moved off?
Oh, yeah, smart.
I'm very attentive.
Yes, that's the one I'm wearing 24/7.
So as you think about data inputs, right? Because so much on AI is based around inputs. What is your perspective on data inputs, the quality of that data? Speak a bit to what you've learned there.
So I'm a data guy. I was working with Google many, many years. I started my data career with the BlackBerry in year 2002. So it's a bit. I learned a lot about data. And there's one rule you all need to understand, and you heard it many times, it's garbage in, garbage out. That's all you need to know, and you need to work with pros to make sense out of data.
I've got a question. Like Mo's the tech expert, and I'm kind of like the dummy that's very slow to catch on to things. And many of the conversations, in particularly this panel, we talk about AI and generative AI and words that I don't fully understand or appreciate. And so I'm sure there's some people in the industry as well that are sort of figuring out how and why this is important to their business. But maybe as a start, someone who would like to, I'm not sure whether you'd be the right person, but maybe someone that could sort of dumb it down and really sort of explain where we are today and how we can think about AI from a practical perspective. You know, what problems would this or could this be solving, which will give us a bit of a pathway to understand how to, you know, to think about connecting this sort of AI to genuine problems that many of us are facing in our business. I'm going to put this one to Grace because we've spoken before, and I like your approach around this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not technical in relation to engineering or software either. So yeah, I come from the approach of if I can think it, the genius can build it. That's kind of the way I think about it. And I think there's two aspects I look at AI. One is around efficiencies of task, right? We, from a healthcare perspective, and same from pretty much any service industry where there's people, we need people having time to deal with people. So technology and AI in particular can take away all the administration, can ultimately automate and add efficiency. So that's one use, which I think is very relevant when you walk around the halls here. I mean, the other aspect is looking at it is, especially in the world of health and the world of data that we're talking about, there's so much out there. And without having AI and generative AI and using that to filter what you need to hear for you, because what you need to hear at a certain time, in your life stage is going to be very different to mine, just because of our gender alone. Never mind our training pathways, never mind our nutrition and our sleep, and we've had a hard week of sleep as well. So without that generative AI, it's hard to get this science to who needs it, when they need it, where they need it. And that's how I see it's the most practical use. Because otherwise, it's hard for anybody in the room, regardless of qualifications, to be qualified in everything. And we're in a world that, especially if you're working with people, you nearly need to be everything from a nutritionist to a physical therapist to an exercise scientist to a gynecologist. You need to nearly be everything, and you can't be, which is where AI comes in order to filter and pull through the data that you need at that time. And I think that's where I find the most exciting part with it, that then everybody in the room, ultimately their skill level goes up 10 levels, because we're able to pull that data, pull that science in a way when it's relevant, why it's relevant, because it's a science-based. But to your point, crap in, crap out, right? So it's important to look at the data. So I think that's where I enjoy working with platforms who are evidence-based and go through the rigor of making sure they're pulling in data across the spectrum. And that's the one thing I would be very, very conscious of here. There's a lot of research, especially in healthcare, that's based upon, up until 1994, women weren't even in research, right? So, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Lots of tools just weren't designed for it. So there's definitely bias in data. There's definitely bias in pretty much everything that we're looking at. So just be conscious of it and ask the question of, is this designed for the population I'm serving? And if it's not, then there's other tools. There's loads of tools out there. So from a practical perspective, just look at the tool. Is it evidence-based? Is it pulling good data? And is it designed for the population that you're trying to serve? That, to me, is the most important part. And then forget about the technology piece in the background. If it serves the purpose of getting a person engaged in what you want them to be engaged in, success.
Being at ABC, one of our advantages is we've just got tons of data, probably one of the largest data sets in the world, and so much on AI. I think AI has really helped in two meaningful ways. One is in the ability to process and understand the data faster than you could ever have done it before. And another example is Novo Nordisk, which is a GLP-1 company based here in Europe. Post-research study, once they've done a clinical study, they used to take 15 weeks to analyze the data and come up with analysis from that research study. Today with AI, they've taken it down to 10 hours. So they're able to discover drugs faster, come up with results faster, and make decisions faster. So AI has really helped accelerate decision-making, both at the consumer level, but also at the enterprise level as well. I just want to go to you, Greg. Having an MMS system, you collect a lot of data points. You collect data on member check-ins, on churn, on retention. How do you view AI helping gyms that you serve today?
So from my side, I think, as Grace has mentioned, it's wherever we can unlock more efficiencies. So I think, as I mentioned, Octiv serving boutiques at the moment. So it's more wherever a gym owner and one of these boutiques does the 5 a.m. class, then is the receptionist, then he's doing the marketing, then he's doing the cleanup, and then he's doing the last class. So he's a jack of all trades. So we're trying to look at where we can input AI to help unlock efficiencies for the gym owner. So anything from chatbots or lead conversion, as well as all the way to programming eventually. So wherever there's options to unlock efficiencies, free up time, high impact should unlock high touch. So wherever we can allow the gym owner to focus on the member by unlocking hours for them, that's what we're focusing on.
Are seated machines slowing your members down? With many people spending the whole day sitting in their car, at the office, and in front of screens, then you have to ask yourself, should you really be sitting down when you're exercising? As seated machines do not promote all body movement, then a solution that encourages standing, putting the body in an upright position, will make workouts more effective. Help your members break from sedentary habits with more active training. Are you interested in creating a more dynamic workout environment? Then contact us today.
I want to go down the line on chatbots. I know you've just given your answer. Grace, I mean, you kind of brought up the she, and you and I have spoken quite a bit around the topic as well, in that women in general are underrepresented, not only in research, and because AI is trained off of data, a lot of it which comes out of research, they are inherently underrepresented in AI outputs as well. And as you're thinking about chatbots here to serve consumers, how should companies be thinking about the output of that? Because it's so easy, it really is. Anyone can load up a chatbot in under an hour. Anyone can throw up a chatbot in under an hour. That's the easy part. The hard part is it relevant, and does it represent the output that you expect it to? You've done a lot of work around AI and the outputs that it has. Speak a bit about what companies should be thinking about before they just almost recklessly implement AI.
It's a challenge, because to your point, there hasn't been volumes of research done robustly on the female physiology. So we're way behind, right? We're way behind.
And I can answer, it's about 80%. 80% of the research, so 80% of the subjects historically in our category have been done on male.
Yeah. And just to quantify that for people that aren't in this space, because of the female physiology being more complex from a monthly cycle as well as the life stages, it was literally deemed as, we need to get drugs to market, we need to produce solutions, let's just use males because it's easy. And that was literally the mandate. And actually in 1970s, it was mandated, there's no need to include women, they're complicated, it's going to cost more. So like that was literally the direction that was given. And then 1994 was the mandate of you have to include women in your studies. Not they have to include equally. I mean, random fact is there's more research and funding gone into male baldness than there is endometriosis, which is a condition massively impactful, sorry, Matt. But it's 1 in 9 women that's affected. So there's this uplift, thankfully, is happening. So it's interesting. And that's one of the reasons, actually, I do like Elfie. So Elfie, the solution itself is taking in lots of data, and it ultimately self-reported as well as seamlessly through all of the wearables. But it is designed around then using that data for pharma. So pharma, to your point exactly, instead of spending 20 years trying to get a medication to market and spending billions on gathering data, that they're able to get faster data, better data, more diverse data, and then analyze it much, much faster. So hopefully we will finally get to a stage where we have medications that are actually designed for the female body. I mean, and I say that today, like statins is a good example. There's 4 statins on the market. None of them have been tested on women throughout different times of their lives. So it's like we do not know. Like even diagnosing cardiology factors, the world is changing. So Elfie is one of the reasons I joined Elfie, because I think it's leading the charge in leveling this playing field. And I think it's an opportunity where Elfie is available to pretty much anyone to use, but also very effective for personal trainers to be leveraging it more across 24/7. This person has conditions, they have diseases. You can't be a cardiologist, an oncologist, an endocrinologist, can't be all of them together. So it levels up that playing field of you can understand what they're taking, what the impact is, what the side effects are, while training them effectively. But to your point then is they're also leading back into the future of science being much better appropriate. But I say that, and to all the women in the audience, every one of us needs to step up and be part of research, and not just one study, but 10, so that we can contribute more. So we have to then literally step up and be part of it. Because without our data, it's just talk.
So on this point, because this is where I'm getting a little bit confused. So I use ChatGPT, and I understand that it has lots of information. And then when I look at chat, there's these GPTs, and if I want certain subjects or if I want to learn about certain things, I kind of go to some of these GPTs. So when you guys are talking about data, and you gave an example of having information specifically on females, what's, when you have AI, or Mo, you mentioned, throw up a chatbot in an hour, what do we need to be aware of in terms of where the information is coming from? Like, does everything go through some kind of chat GPT that has access to everything on the internet, or are you guys specifically training these individual GPTs, or whatever they're called, to have specific information about a subject that you want? So I'm going to kind of throw that over to all of you. And if you can just dumb it down for someone like myself so I can figure out, what I need to be looking for in a product.
Yeah, before I do that, just one simple explanation in addition to what you said about agentic AI. If you have the latest Llama model from Facebook, or always the latest model, you have one agent of the newest model. If I take 10 agents of a very old model, I can make the same performance. 10 agents of an old model.
What are agents, just for...
What's an agent? An agent is a pre-trained model with a certain task. So if I build a grid of multi-agents, I'm diving into a smarter system. So the way I explain it in sports, the top athletes, they do have a nutrition coach, an endurance coach, strength coach, a mental coach. We built that with agents. Each agent has a specific task. One agent could consider what females have different to males. So we have pre-trained the model with male data, and one agent is responsible for converting, okay, this might be true for males, but what we learned from 100,000 scientific papers from PubMed is those who have data about females, we can start doing extrapolation with this agent dedicated to the female role, and your board of trainers works for you. That's agentic AI.
Well, I was just going to add one more thing, Grace, on that. I mean, just to carry on what Klaus said, when we deploy agents, to your point, the approach that I take with agents is to treat them like employees. And you should be thinking about that from an organization perspective. So when you have an employee, you have an onboarding, you have training, you have quarterly reviews, you have performance reviews. An AI agent, especially if you're going to treat them as running a role within your organization, you should treat that the same way. You need to have governance and processes around that as well. This is not something that you just let run loose and expect the result back and not have any management oversight. You wouldn't do that with your team or your employees. So the same process, I mean, literally what you have for employee onboarding, for employee management, even employee development and employee training, you've got to employ that into AI agents. A lot of people forget that. They think we can deploy an agent, set it and forget it, but that is the furthest from the truth.
Mo, can I ask you something on that? So if you think about a company organogram and a corporate structure, I've seen now, like you're saying, I'm interested if this is what you're referring to, you'll have an AI that is head of marketing, an AI that's head of human resources, with sub-AI agents below that. Is that kind of what you're alluding to with terms of the structure?
Absolutely. I wouldn't know if I'd put AI as the head of anything rather than as AI helping the head or helping someone. It's, you know, the other concept, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, is this concept of a digital twin. And you might have heard that term. How many of you have heard the term digital twin? Right? Okay. But many people don't know what that means. A digital twin is a term that is often used in healthcare, where you're creating a digital version of yourself. So what does your digital twin look like? It could be collecting your wearable data, it could be collecting your health records, and so on. The same is true as an employee as well. How do you increase productivity? That's a question that I get asked a lot. Well, if you can create a digital twin for yourself, for things like Klaus mentioned, you can have now one researcher having 4 or 5 twins executing on tasks that otherwise would be run by the single person. So I think from an org perspective, I absolutely would be thinking about org charts with AI complementing an existing org chart. But I want to go to Grace. I know you wanted to comment.
Yeah, just to come into that, I think it adds on nicely is the training for those, to your point, the training is important then, so individually, and that's the same. And in terms of the AI, is you're pulling in data from a specific source. So if you're looking at a particular, training a model, be specific on what data you need to pull in. So, pregnancy is a good example. There's really credible resources on pregnancy. Pull in that data. So to your point, then you're training it and setting it up to do what you needed to do, as if it was a different agent. If it's something to do with marketing, you pull in data around marketing. If it's got to do with physiology, you pull in data around that. So there is a bit of work in terms of setting it up to be effective and to be accurate. But it's worth it. It's fundamentally worth it. But yeah, there's an element of, as if you're thinking about it as an extra employee on the headcount, is train that to do that job. It's the same way you would train a human being, but you're pulling in data for it to be effective.
One of the things I found, again, using ChatGPT, because that's about as far as my experience goes with this, but I find it can be quite lazy. And so if I'm asking it to do something, you sometimes have to ask it 2 or 3 times, and then you're like, are you really giving me all the information, or have you missed something? And that sounds as though it's quite a powerful system that's had a huge amount of investment to get to where it is. What are some of the things that we need to be careful of about some of the challenges with AI in terms of trusting the information? Because initially I was just diving in and believed everything it told me, and now I'm almost like a little bit skeptical. So maybe one of you guys could sort of jump in on that one.
Super important point, and we were working on that very hard. That's the reason why, for example, we are building the prompt, not just on what you type in, because we enrich your prompt in the background. So we already feed output from scientific papers and add it to the prompt, going to the GPT. And we are also giving the URL of the scientific paper as an output. So giving you an example, if the trainer wonders about altitude training or tampering right before the competition, what would be the best for this athlete? Then we use all the data of the athlete, but we are also using the scientific papers and build one prompt part of it visible, part of it not visible, to use AI to get the best out for you. And if you're still skeptical, there are the links in there where you can read the scientific papers, especially related to the question you have.
Yeah, the references are important. Definitely ask, and you have to intentionally ask for the references. And that's important to look at the references because some of them are crap. There's plenty of research published that's absolutely useless and inaccurate. It's not, the research study protocols are not foolproof. But yeah, go look at the research. Actually, go read the references as well is worth it. It's needed. You need to have some level of, I trust this data. And I'd stay skeptical. I do not think trust everything you read. Stay skeptical, absolutely.
So I just want to switch gears a bit and go into privacy and compliance as it relates to AI. We talked about bias in AI. We talked about quality of training data in AI. So much of what we discuss is data governed and it's data related, yet data is probably one of the most loosely governed concepts globally. Not that it isn't governed, it's that it's very inconsistently governed. So if you look at data standards in Europe, generally people think that Europe has more stricter data standards, and that's true in some cases. In other cases, the US with CCPA and other legislation might even have stricter standards in certain aspects. Then you go to Asia or the Middle East. If you look at the UAE or Saudi Arabia, they treat personal data almost too strictly. And it's very, very hard to even work with some of the PII data related there. But what are some things that companies, as they're implementing AI, both on the front end, we talked about agentic applications, the back end as workers, what are some of the things, and I'll start with you, Greg, that they should be thinking about data governance and data compliance? Because yes, it was important, but it's more important now than ever.
Yeah, so I think transparency is key in this one. Telling your users exactly how you anonymizing the data and how it's going back into the system. I think I've been thinking about this a lot also, again, from the boutique space and the brick and mortar gym space, because AI can be a gap between the coach and the member. So telling them how you're using AI, what it's doing, where it's going to be interacting with you, I think is very important. And you can apply that same thinking all the way up to corporate. So I think just being transparent is very, very essential at this point of time.
Just jumping in on that, are there any guide rails in place currently? Because you read in the news that even like a ChatGPT sort of scours everybody's website for information, and in some cases there might not be permission. So at the moment, is it still a bit of a Wild West where arguably if you wanted to just collect all of this data from people, whether you told them or not, people are getting away with that? And where potentially do you see that going? Because certainly I'm sure there is going to become more regulation and people may have to in some way backtrack. So how are you, I guess, looking at that at the moment?
I think it depends on the service and product you're offering. So, I mean, if we take Whoop for an example, right? That's your wearable. It's based on a GPT-4. So their model gets anonymized and sent back into it. But people know that they're signing up for that. So I think it all comes down, like I said, to the transparency and what the service and product is. I think there is definitely room for a gray area where you don't know your data is being anonymized and fed into a data set. So
when you say people know, I'm assuming that you're referring to the pages of things that you have to tick before you use the service.
Matt, I think you might be concerned over what you're putting into ChatGPT now. Because it does train itself back, right? So now you may be thinking twice about what am I asking it and what types of things is it learning? Yeah.
Just adding on privacy, my last startup was a privacy tech company. So I've built a startup with 70 employees already. And when I started Wictory, one of my first questions, interviewing athletes and coaches, was, do you care about privacy? Their answer was, no, why should I? I have the doping controls and so on. I don't care about privacy. So I said, let me rephrase my question. What if your competitors would get your data? Looking to their eyes, they were like, hell, shit, I didn't think about it. So in sports, especially in competitive sports, privacy might be used in a different term, but it's the same essence. And therefore, you ultimately have to think about sovereignty, data sovereignty. Where does your data go? For example, with Bola, we have a Finnish provider of a device where we can ensure that we keep the data within the European Union. We can collect the data in the European Union, we process it in the European Union, we are not conflicting with whatever Mr. President Trump is signing or not signing or turning back, because we can stay in one legal area. The same is true for the US. We can make sure that the data sovereignty is always given. And companies who do not understand where their data flow is, they have no clue about privacy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm a big fan of Polar as well. I have a Polar Vantage 3 on right now. What I would add to that too is from a consumer perspective, so you've got the elite athletes where programs are really confidential, right? The training programs, you look at cyclists, the tour, how you supplement, all this incredibly confidential. But on the consumer side, I would say that consumers have built a lot of awareness around value. And what I mean by that is a lot of us grew up in Web 1.0 and Web 2.0, in that we understand when we use a tool like Google and we do a search term, how is Google free? Because we remember a world where we had to pay for everything that we used. Now we use Google, well, it's free because we get paid ads and it puts cookies and it tracks our data. How is Facebook free? How is Instagram free? These companies are monetizing on data. So on one hand, consumers have accepted that there will be a trade in value and they will put a perception to that value. And when it comes to AI or any data exchange, I always tell brands this, you need to be providing value for what you get. If not, consumers can revolt and they can totally reject that idea. So I always recommend people that you are dealing with an evolved and an elevated customer and consumer, especially post-pandemic. I mean, think about the growth of wearables and the proliferation of wearables and AI post-pandemic was huge. And what happened with ChatGPT, the release of that in 2023 was transformative. Matthew?
Yeah, I was going back to Klaus's point. I think that, and I take your point about the people know that they're using the data and they're getting the service for free, but I think that balance of power has probably changed, and clearly, you know, the value that these companies have from using data is incredible, and the consumer, probably, yes, they get value, and you could argue that that would have cost a lot of money many years ago, but I think there's definitely a lot more awareness about, look, I want to kind of know what I'm using and how deep that goes into my personal life. And I'm just sort of wondering, you know, like the power of some of these tools now, some of these AI tools on people of all ages, that they you know, really hijack your mind and basically, you know, put any information in there they want. And the more they learn about you, the more that they're basically kind of hypnotizing everybody as we walk through the halls looking at their devices. So what is the future for some of this? And do you see that there could be a bit of a tipping point where, you know, consumers are sort of almost like demanding a lot more control and transparency about things that they clearly don't understand at the moment because of the rate that things are progressing? I'll give that to you, Klaus.
So I've learned a lot in the history about IT systems, and it's almost always true also for what is new on the market. Is there any company switching off the firewall just because, I mean, let's not bother about, we're all sharing data. So you have to protect certain data, while a lot of the other data, you know, you're connected. So think about your own firewall. And just building on that, we have female athletes. The female athletes are much more concerned about who gets my data, because there is certain information in the data they do not want to share. So you need to have a control panel where you can say, this data I share with all my coaches. This data I only share with my head coach, with my personal coach. If your solution provider doesn't enable this feature, for example, look for another vendor.
Yeah, I think there's transparency of where the data is going and what it's being used for is necessary. And I think like never before we're going to have people asking for it. I think you're right. We're definitely more conscious. Like one of the companies talk about Move Ahead, so it's for kids. and it is on device. And I think we're going to be using terms like on device, no storage, no data stored, like things people are going to get used to more of this than the terminology without it being technical. So we talk about it, the recording, there is no recording, it's using the camera on device, the data is processed on device, and once you stop using the device, the data is gone. So there's no recording, there's no storage. And obviously dealing with kids, that's really, really important, but we need to be transparent about that. So, and recently with Elfie, we talked about this on a podcast, and Mo has been on my podcast as well, so Matt, you're next. But yeah, likewise, then you have to talk about it transparently of where is the data stored, why is it stored, who's it being shared with, is it being sold anonymously, is it being sold personalized, and just there's an element of transparency that we have to stand up to. And I think that's only fair to everybody here as well. So whether you're producing a technology for professionals to use, or whether you're the professional using that, there's kind of that trail of transparency needs to become clearer and clearer. I think that's where we're going. We're getting more into some basic terminology of where is it stored, why is it stored, what's it being sold for, and just that basic enough that we can kind of go, I don't need to be an AI expert, I don't need to be technical, but I need to trust that the person I'm serving this with, my clients, has got some reassurance of why I'm asking them these questions.
Yeah, I think more than ever now, the more value we can provide to consumers through this data, the more likely they'll be able to want to share. But it's a very fine line between if that trust is broken through whatever reason, you're going to lose them forever, and it could ruin a company. So I think, as Klaus mentioned, that's an amazing thing. I think that is probably the future, where you'll be able to toggle on and off certain aspects of whatever data you are sharing for that certain product. But I do believe, though, people will continue to share this data. We are just at the beginning of this rise. This trend is going to come and keep growing. And I think we will be more willing to share if we're getting that value back.
And just to add to that, make the assumption if it's online, it's being used. Just make that assumption and don't think otherwise. I think that's the reality of it. Somebody is making money out of this somewhere. Just be honest about that, and hopefully you can control what you can control. But if you put any data online, any picture, any data, it is being used by somebody. That's my element of it.
There is one more aspect I'd like to share. In Europe, we lost the game because the big data is with Amazon, the big data is with Google, the big data is with Facebook. So what can you do in Europe? What we are building on is so-called data spaces strategy. We have built a protocol that 2 sports clubs in soccer, American football, they can share data with each other, because there's a certain protocol that you can get data out without getting conflicting data to the system. So we have worked on data spaces concepts, and it's segment by segment. So there's a data space in healthcare, there's a data space in mobility, and that's our approach right now to close the gap to the US market. And I'm mentioning it because there's always a next step. We just believe we know already everything, but the answer is no, we don't. There is a few things out there, new technologies, which might be super interesting in the future or not. We don't know. Data spaces is just a concept which is heavily pushed in the European Union because it helps us to work on our disadvantages versus the US market. And you should be aware of that maybe there's a future where you really can easily share data in sports while you're not really, breaking all the rules, and you can get a certain essence out of the data. I consider that a very interesting concept.
All this could sound very overwhelming, right? There's so much around AI. How do you break it up into pieces? So what I typically recommend is, for example, Matthew's a big fan of ChatGPT. Find the right tools and get to be really good at the tools. As an example, today, ABC announced a partnership with eGym, and a lot of that is largely driven around AI. We're going to be implementing eGym Genius within our application. A month ago, we announced a partnership with MyFitnessPal as an example, because we want to add nutrition into our Train Rise platform. So look at partners as a way to help accelerate your roadmap. Obviously, you've got to make sure that you go through the governance and the compliance and that there's the right product market fit. But I'd love to go with this panel here and ask a question around features, and what AI features would you say is most relevant, or what are you most excited about? Is it based around training? Is it based around nutrition? Is it based around analyzing your wellness? Could be anything. So, Greg, I will start with you. What is an AI feature for 2025 that you are most excited about?
Okay, so personally, I'm very interested in the space now of what we can do on top of AI. So kind of I've been thinking about augmented training or virtual training with actual smart cameras looking at form. So I think that's an amazing space that we'll see a lot of cool and exciting tech happening. Nothing to do with our business, just personally something that I think is probably the next evolution of what we can do with this AI, because we have an amazing AI programs happening now. But with smart tech and cameras, I mean, we're living in a world that you can go potentially get a golf lesson from Tiger Woods, you know?
Yeah, I think we are only scratching the surface with cameras. And I think countries like China have actually advanced a lot more than Europe or the US. And I think it's the camera and AI marriage is at its infancy.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be transformative over the next decade.
No, I think, yeah, this is a space that I've been looking into a lot. There's a company, Tempo, that are doing it already. But I mean, in golf, for example, you already have a TrackMan, which to 98% can tell you where you hit the ball. Now, if you overlay that with AR, an augmented reality coach, and they can look at your form and what went wrong with the swing, and you can apply that to any sport. You're really entering a whole new digital world. So, yeah, it's very, very cool.
I know Temple well because we actually worked on that, but they're using a Microsoft Kinect depth camera system and something else on the phone. Grace, I'd love to move on to you. Is there one, I know your mind's probably spinning. You probably have 10 things you're working on. Maybe you can get 2. What are 2 things that you're most excited about for 2025?
I'll narrow it to 2. So one for me is the ability for healthcare to move faster. And I think that from a female perspective, but also the chronic diseases space. So the idea being that I can get access to pretty much any information for someone sitting in front of me or some complexity at home, as can any single person. So if somebody has symptoms or side effects or just they're not sure what's happening, there's so much information at their fingertips that they can get access to that. And I think in a much more credible way. Not to say it's Dr. Google or Dr. anything else. I mean, but it's still an element of what's happening. Should I be doing something with it? So I think that's one. And then the other one for me is that anything is possible when there's multiple AIs working together. So like one company I'm working with is completely not tech savvy, right? They're kind of coming out of the dark ages in one way, where they literally are still working on paper. And I'm like, okay, we've got to make this business a lot more efficient. Otherwise you have to double down on your staff. And we're currently in this process of looking at, well, what's your current processes? What's the best case scenario you can even think of for the efficiencies across the business? And then we're putting together about 3 or 4 different technology solutions to work together to streamline the entire system. And I know Steffi's there from Keep Me, for example. So Keep Me is one of the solutions that's working with Sport Alliance, who's right behind us as well. And it's all integrated. So at the end of the day, like the team that are technical, they will sort out all that complexity, but there's only one person on that team. The rest are, your person at reception, the person that's managing the gym. So it means that they're getting back to dealing with people. And that's what excites me the most, actually, from the AI space, is that we can take away all of the administration that we do, make it as efficient as physically possible so we can get back to treating people and working with people, which is what we all got into this industry to do that. And of course, we all spend a whole bunch of time on administration tasks. So I'm delighted for the likes of solutions like Keep Me and what the guys are doing here to make that as simple as possible so we can get back to do what we love to do.
I'm definitely a fan of Keep Me as well. Klaus, you're not allowed to say your own solution.
Say it again.
You're not allowed to reference your own solution in what you're most excited about.
Why did you think he was going to do that then, man?
I had a feeling he was going to go there.
I have no clue.
He gave me
It
this
just
look.
looks like that was about.
Well, it's at least important that we have fun up here. Let me share the story of Anna with you. Anna is an athlete, youth athlete. She is age 15 and she was 6 weeks ago at the World Championship in biathlon. Biathlon is cross country and you have this weapon and you have to compete on time. So she's a female, she's in a female team of the Austrian Ski Federation, and they were traveling there, to get, how's it called, acclimatized. So, and Anna was data-driven. So the solution Anna is using was alerting her 7 days before the World Championship started, something is wrong. Something is wrong. Just alerting. So Anna decided together with her coach, I'm not training today, I'm taking a break 2 days. The rest of the female team continued training. They also felt not perfect, but it's the championship. Work harder, train harder. Anna was the only athlete who competed at the World Championship. All the others got sick. So that's the story of Anna. That's the power of AI.
Well, look, we're going to wrap up, and I think it would be a good opportunity. We talked about a lot of different subjects, and I think what would be nice is maybe share a takeaway from our conversation that you feel is important for the audience listening and watching to take away in relation to the subject of AI. Let's start with you, Greg.
I think, we've spoken to some very high-level, kind of complex aspects of AI today, but I think for the everyday person who might have a smaller business or is in a role within an organization, I think identify one pain point if you're not yet kind of adopting into AI, and find a solution with a technology partner, many of them here today, that can solve that thing and start measuring against the impact of that aspect that you're trying to solve and the ROI on that. So whether it saved you hours or you were able to respond to so many requests within a month, to start using that one pain point as a kind of indication of how you should be rolling out AI further, I think is super important for everyone. So identify one low-hanging pain point and go for it.
Grace?
I was going to say that, but I was going to say identify all your pain points and go for it, because that's the way I operate. But to add to it, I think for me it's just challenge yourself as well. Challenge what you're doing, your processes, but also challenge who you're serving. And I think it's an opportunity with AI in particular is to serve more people more effectively. So I would say to that, challenge yourself to serve more people. We have a world with an inactivity crisis and with the health crisis. So, everyone here is part of that solution, and I would challenge you to be more part of that solution in whatever way you can and as efficiently as you can.
Klaus, you're not allowed to talk about your product, okay?
There is the adoption curve of technology. The adoption curve of technology says the innovators and the early adopters are the first ones to use the technology. And it also says the early majority only will start using it if the innovators and the early adopters made good experience. So there is no majority if the innovators and the early adopters are not satisfied. They call it the chasm, falling into the chasm. There are books written about it. So my advice to you would be, talk to pioneers, talk to gentlemen and ladies who already have done their first step, because everything else you will have forgotten tomorrow already, because we're all lazy. So talk to pioneers, how they use it today, and copy from their behavior. We are good at copying, not just the Chinese. Copy what the pioneers are doing, and then you will be on the right track.
Mo, what are your takeaways?
Well, I think one, FIBO's been phenomenal. Seeing the energy back, I think it's the best FIBO I've seen since the pandemic. It's gotten very international. This hall that we're in today has not existed before. So I think as an organization, the topics, the conversation, I'm hearing a lot around the globalization of our industry. And Grace, to your point, there is a lot of greenfield out there. Most countries, the US is the highest. We've got about a 23% penetration in the category, followed by Germany and then the UK. The Nordics, I think, is technically number 2 at about 20%. So it's how do we reach everyone else? And AI is a tool, I would add, probably with GLP-1 as another one. These two tools are great levers to help us reach the rest of the world and the rest of the population who's not currently active right now. So you should be thinking about AI in nearly everything that you do, and don't be afraid to try it. If you're not thinking about it, and if you're not executing AI either in your personal life or within your business, it's not that you'll be left behind, you just won't be relevant. And it's not that you won't be relevant 10 years from now, you'll be relevant next year. So you gotta really make this a focus and a priority, and like anything else, it takes intent, it takes commitment. Treat it like your workout.
Now you meant to ask me that question, Mo.
That's right. I keep on forgetting that this is a live podcast that we're recording. Matthew, any key takeaways for you?
Well, what I've learned from you is just get involved in it. I'm sort of fairly new to tech, and so I've made an effort to every day do something on chat and experiment, and through that process I've learned quite a lot just by sort of getting involved in it. And then the second thing is I get an opportunity to interview some fantastic people like we have today, and just be curious and ask a lot of questions. And I found, through these interviews and through listening to a lot of podcasts, I've really been able to sort of figure out how to specifically apply that to my business. And I think the big overarching takeaways is what problem is it I'm looking to solve, and then how can I sort of really use some of these tools to solve a specific problem, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed and have, I'm guilty of having long lists of things that I'm interested to do or trying to solve, but in reality they're a little bit of a distraction from what I should be focusing on. So just sort of dialing in on what that key specific problem is, and then sort of building the tools around that.
I want to add one kind of funny story which came up in the last month. So we have a podcast. I think we're the largest B2B fitness podcast in the market. And a month ago, I got an email of a new podcast. And I listened to it, and I was like, it sounds a lot like you and I, except there's a male and a female. And these topics are kind of what we talked about a week ago. So I just reached out. I was just curious. And it's this company, someone who I know in Australia, and said, yeah, we love your podcast. So I thought, why don't I create my own podcast and use AI? So 2 AI voices. But here's what we found. We listened to a few episodes, and it wasn't authentic, right? So it's the feedback, it's the humor. Klaus is just picking on you, which is thank you for being a good sport. But it doesn't have that authenticity or the knowledge. It essentially took the stories that we talked about and the guests that we talked about and used AI to do it. So AI needs authenticity. And I know it sounds like a really strange thing saying that, but he's a good sport. He's going to continue replicating our podcast, and we're going to continue doing our thing. So with that, thank you so much for being here. Feel free to connect with all of us, and we hope you have a great rest of your FIBO.
Thank you.
Thank you.